I'm Brinley Caldwell, 32, and I just watched my world implode in the most unexpected way. The day of my grandfather's will reading was supposed to bring closure. Instead, it ripped open decades of family secrets and revealed that my own parents had been plotting against me my entire life. They thought their golden son would walk away with everything, leaving me with nothing. But Grandpa Malcolm had one final trick up his sleeve, and what happened next changed our family forever. Before I dive into this wild story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever had family drama of your own, and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Trust me, this tale of betrayal and sweet, sweet karma will have you on the edge of your seat. Growing up in the affluent suburb of Oak Ridge, Connecticut, I always felt like I was living in the shadow of my younger brother Mason. Despite being born 3 years after me, Mason somehow became the center of our family universe from the moment he arrived. Our parents, Richard and Eleanor Caldwell, were respected figures in the community. Dad, a successful corporate attorney, and Mom, the quintessential socialite who chaired every committee at the country club. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family. Our colonial-style home, with its manicured lawn and swimming pool, was featured twice in the local Homes of Distinction tour. Family portraits showed 4 smiling faces, but what the camera didn't capture was the growing divide between us. Brinley, why can't you be more like your brother, became the unofficial family motto. While Mason excelled at sports, bringing home trophies and earning my father's proud claps on the shoulder, I preferred books and art. My watercolor paintings won regional competitions, but my achievements were merely acknowledged with polite nods rather than celebration. "That's nice, dear," Mom would say, before quickly changing the subject to Mason's latest accomplishment. The disparity in treatment wasn't subtle. Mason received a brand new BMW for his 16th birthday. When my 16th came around, I got driving lessons and permission to use the old family Volvo. For college, Mason was sent to Princeton with a generous monthly allowance. I received a partial scholarship to NYU, and my parents made it clear that I needed to work part-time to build character. Despite the uneven treatment, I never resented Mason. He was just playing the role assigned to him, soaking up the adoration without questioning why it came so easily. It wasn't his fault. Our parents had decided he was the worthy one. "They're just old-fashioned, Bryn," my grandfather Malcolm would tell me during our weekly phone calls. "Some people still think boys are the ones who carry on the family legacy. But you and I know better, don't we?" Grandpa Malcolm was different. A self-made man who built a regional grocery store chain from nothing, he valued hard work and authenticity above all else. During summer breaks, I would stay at his lakeside home in Vermont, where we would fish at dawn and talk about books in the evenings. "You remind me of myself, Brinley," he'd say, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Never quite fitting the mold, but creating your own path anyway." After college, while Mason followed Dad into corporate law and moved into a company-purchased condo downtown, I started my own graphic design business from a tiny apartment in the Arts District. The early years were lean, but I was determined to make it on my own merit rather than family connections. When clients started recognizing my work and bigger contracts came in, I finally felt like I was establishing my own identity outside the Caldwell dynasty. At 28, I had enough success to purchase my own small house in a vibrant neighborhood filled with other artists and entrepreneurs. I decorated it with vintage finds and my own artwork, creating a home that felt authentically mine. My relationship with my parents remained cordial but distant. Holiday gatherings were exercises in polite conversation and avoiding sensitive topics. Dad would inevitably steer discussions toward Mason's latest court victory or partnership prospects, while Mom would subtly critique my clothing choices or relationship status. "Still single, Brinley? You know, Elizabeth Porter's daughter just got engaged to a neurosurgeon," she would comment while passing the cranberry sauce. Meanwhile, Mason had married Vanessa, the daughter of one of Dad's golf buddies. Their wedding was a lavish affair at the country club, with over 300 guests and a feature in the society pages. I served as a bridesmaid wearing a dress I hated, and smiling for photos that made us look like one big happy family. Grandpa Malcolm attended the wedding but seemed unimpressed by the extravagance. At 85, he had grown more direct with age. "All this fuss," he muttered to me during the reception. "A marriage isn't about the party, it's about the partnership that comes after everyone goes home." When Grandpa's health began to decline last year, I was the one who visited most frequently. While Mom and Dad called occasionally and Mason sent expensive flower arrangements, I made the 3-hour drive to Vermont nearly every weekend. We would sit on his porch overlooking the lake, and I'd update him on my latest projects while he told stories from his youth. "I've been thinking about legacy, Brinley," he said, during one of our last conversations, his voice weaker but his eyes still sharp, "about what we leave behind and who we entrust it to." "Don't talk like that, Grandpa," I said, reaching for his hand. "You'll outlive us all," out of pure stubbornness. He laughed, but then grew serious. "Just remember, appearances can be deceiving. Sometimes the truth takes time to surface, but it always does." I didn't understand what he meant then. 3 weeks later, he passed peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was held at the lake house as per his wishes. It was a simple service reflecting his no-nonsense approach to life. I noticed my parents seeming almost impatient throughout the ceremony, while Mason checked his watch repeatedly. As we gathered in Grandpa's study the following day for the reading of the will, I had no expectations. I assumed the lake house and the proceeds from the sale of his business would go to my parents, with perhaps a small remembrance for Mason and me. I was there, out of respect and love, not anticipation. Little did I know that Grandpa Malcolm had been watching our family dynamics more carefully than any of us realized. And he had been planning something that would shake the very foundation of what we thought we knew about each other. The atmosphere in Grandpa Malcolm's study felt oppressive despite the large windows overlooking the lake. Dark wood paneling and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves gave the room a formal air that matched the occasion. Mr. Harrington, Grandpa's attorney for over 40 years, adjusted his glasses as we all took our seats. My parents on the leather sofa, Mason and Vanessa in wingback chairs, and me perched on the window seat where I'd spent countless hours reading as a child. "Before I begin the formal reading," Mr. Harrington said, his voice carrying the gravitas of someone accustomed to delivering significant news, "Malcolm asked me to play this recording." He placed a small digital recorder on the mahogany desk and pressed play. Grandpa Malcolm's familiar voice filled the room somehow, making him feel present again. "If you're listening to this, then I've finally run out of time." He began, a hint of his usual dry humor evident despite the circumstances. "I've lived a good long life and have few regrets. But I've been troubled by something I've observed over the years, and I can't leave this world without addressing it." I noticed my father shift uncomfortably while my mother's spine straightened almost imperceptibly. Richard and Eleanor, Grandpa continued, "I've watched how you've favored Mason over Brinley since they were children. I've stayed silent, hoping you would recognize the damage you were doing, but that day never came." The room grew still. Mason looked at me with wide eyes while our parents exchanged glances. What I'm about to reveal may come as a shock, but the truth has been buried too long. 29 years ago, when Caldwell Markets was on the verge of bankruptcy during the recession, Richard came to me for a loan. The amount was substantial, nearly everything I had at the time. I agreed on one condition, that the firstborn child of the next generation would inherit my estate. "Richard, you signed a binding agreement to this effect when Brinley was just 3 years old." I felt the blood drain from my face. My father's expression had hardened into a mask. "But as Brinley grew up," Grandpa's voice continued, "I watched you systematically undermine and diminish her while elevating Mason. It became clear that you intended to circumvent our agreement. 2 years ago, Richard, you came to me with legal documents, drawn up by your firm. that would effectively nullify our original agreement and redirect my estate to Mason instead. Gasps echoed through the room. Even Mason looked stunned. I pretended to consider your proposal, but in reality I was documenting everything. The original agreement stands legally binding and witnessed. But more importantly, it revealed to me your true character and reinforced my conviction about who should carry on my legacy. Mr. Harrington paused the recording and pulled out several folders from his briefcase. I have copies of all the documents referenced, including the original agreement and the later attempt to invalidate it. But Mr. Caldwell asked that I finish playing his message before proceeding with the will. He pressed play again and Grandpa's voice returned, now addressing me directly. Brinley, you've shown integrity, creativity, and determination, building your own success without the advantages your brother was given. You visited me not out of obligation or expectation but out of genuine love. That means more than you know. Tears welled in my eyes as his voice, slightly scratchy but full of conviction, continued. Mason, he said, his tone softening slightly, this isn't your fault. You were raised to expect preferential treatment. I hope this serves as a wake-up call about the real world and the importance of earning your place in it. Finally, he addressed all of us. Family should be about love and support, not manipulation and favoritism. I hope that what I've decided will ultimately lead to healing, though I expect there may be anger first. Remember that a true legacy isn't measured in dollars but in values passed down. Choose wisely which ones you embrace. The recording ended, leaving a heavy silence. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though I couldn't tell if her tears were genuine or performative. That's preposterous, my father finally sputtered. I never signed any such agreement. This is senility speaking, not my father. Mr. Harrington calmly opened one of the folders and removed a document, sliding it across the desk. This is the original agreement signed by you on March 18, 1996, and notarized by my predecessor. I was a junior associate at the firm then, but I witnessed it personally. I leaned forward to see the document, my father's unmistakable signature bold at the bottom of the page. Beside it was another document, dated just 18 months ago, proposing to invalidate the original agreement in favor of Mason. This is outrageous, my mother interjected. Malcolm was clearly not of sound mind. We'll contest this. Mr. Harrington shook his head slightly. Mrs. Caldwell, I met with Malcolm just 3 weeks before his passing. He underwent a complete psychological evaluation at that time, specifically to prevent such claims. The results confirmed he was entirely competent to make these decisions. He then proceeded to read the actual will. The lake house, the investment portfolio, worth millions. The remaining shares in Caldwell Markets, which my father had never fully owned, I now realized, and various other assets. All were left to me with specific instructions about their management. Mason received a modest trust fund, generous by normal standards but a fraction of the total estate. My parents were left only personal mementos and a small annual stipend that would barely cover country club dues. This is far from what we discussed, Richard, my mother hissed under her breath, but loud enough for everyone to hear. You promised me Malcolm's estate would secure our retirement and Mason's future. The implications of her words hung in the air. They had been counting on this inheritance, planning on it, and had deliberately misled Mason about his prospects. As Mr. Harrington continued with the legal details, I sat, stunned, processing not just the unexpected wealth, but the revelation of decades of family deception. The inheritance wasn't just money and property. It was the truth I'd always sensed but could never prove. The aftermath of the will reading erupted into chaos almost immediately. My father slammed his fist on the antique desk, causing Mr. Harrington's papers to scatter. This is completely unacceptable, he bellowed, his carefully cultivated professional demeanor evaporating. My father was manipulated. Brinley must have gotten to him during all those convenient weekend visits. I felt a flash of both hurt and anger. Even now, faced with evidence of his own deception, he was trying to flip the narrative. "That's not fair, Dad," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I visited Grandpa because I loved him, not because I was plotting something." "Oh please," my mother interjected, her voice dripping with disdain. "You've always played the victim, Brinley. The misunderstood daughter. Poor little artist living in your brother's shadow." It was a calculated act. Mason had remained uncharacteristically silent until now, his expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something I couldn't quite identify. Finally, he looked directly at our parents. "Did you really make that agreement?" he asked quietly. "Did you promise Grandpa that Brinley would inherit everything?" My father's hesitation spoke volumes. "It was a different time, son. Your grandfather was being unreasonable holding the loan over my head. I never intended to honor it." "And the document from 2 years ago," Mason pressed. "The one trying to redirect the inheritance to me. We were protecting your future," Mom insisted, reaching for Mason's hand. He pulled away. "By lying, by manipulating Grandpa, by making promises to me that you knew weren't yours to make." The tension in the room was suffocating. Mr. Harrington cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps I should give the family some privacy. The documents are here for your review. I'll be staying at the local inn if anyone has questions." He gathered his briefcase and slipped out, leaving us to our implosion. As soon as the door closed, my father turned his attention back to me. "If you think this is over, you're sadly mistaken. We'll contest the will. We'll drag this through every court possible. By the time it's settled, the legal fees will have eaten up half the estate." "Richard," my mother cautioned, glancing toward Mason. She was still trying to manage appearances even now. "No, Eleanor. She needs to understand what she's up against." He faced me with cold determination. "You have no idea how to manage assets of this magnitude. You've barely kept that little design business afloat." Malcolm was senile and sentimental. "The courts will see that." Something inside me snapped. Years of swallowing hurt, of making myself smaller to keep the peace, of accepting the role they had assigned me. It all boiled over. "That little design business generated 6 figures last year," I shot back, "without any help from the mighty Richard Caldwell. And Grandpa wasn't senile, he was finally seeing you clearly." I turned to Mason. "Did you know about any of this? The original agreement? Their plan to redirect the inheritance?" He shook his head, looking genuinely distressed. "No. They told me Grandpa had always intended for me to take over eventually. That it was understood." "Of course it was understood," Mom insisted. "Malcolm built this family's fortune. It should stay with the Caldwell name." "I am a Caldwell," I reminded her. "Until you marry," she countered. "Then it leaves the family. Mason's children will be Caldwells." I laughed bitterly. "So that's what this is about, preserving the precious family name. What about preserving family loyalty, or basic honesty?" My father checked his watch impatiently. "This is getting us nowhere. Mason, we should go. The lawyers at the firm will know how to handle this." But Mason didn't move. He was staring at the documents on the desk, particularly the one with our father's signature, promising Grandpa that I would be the heir. "You lied to me," he said quietly. "All those times you told me about my responsibilities as the Caldwell heir. All those expectations you placed on me. You were promising me something that was never yours to give." "We were protecting your birthright," Dad insisted. "My birthright?" Mason's voice rose. "According to this, Bryn's inheritance was established before I was even born. Did you have me just to try to circumvent this agreement?" The question hung in the air. My mother's face went pale, and my father's expression shuttered closed. "That's absurd," Mom finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. A horrible suspicion began forming in my mind. "Oh my God," I whispered. "That's exactly what happened, isn't it? You had Mason hoping Grandpa would change his mind if there was a male heir." "You're being ridiculous," my father snapped, but he couldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa, who had been silently observing until now, stood up. "I think I need some air," she said, shooting Mason a look of profound discomfort before hurrying out. In the uncomfortable silence that followed, I noticed a sealed envelope that had fallen from Mr. Harrington's papers. It had my name written on it in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. I picked it up and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a handwritten letter. "My dearest Brinley, if you're reading this, then Richard has reacted exactly as I expected. He's threatened legal action, questioned my sanity, and possibly accused you of manipulation. Classic Richard. He never could accept responsibility for his actions. What he doesn't know is that I've left Mr. Harrington with irrefutable evidence of the lengths he went to in attempting to divert your inheritance. There are recorded conversations, additional documents, and testimony from other parties that would be deeply embarrassing if made public, not just to the family but to his standing at the firm. I don't tell you this to encourage retaliation, but to give you protection. Show him this letter if necessary. The choice of how to proceed is yours, but know that you're holding all the cards. I hope someday your parents will recognize the remarkable woman you've become without their support. I hope Mason will forge his own path rather than following the one laid out for him. And I hope you will use this inheritance to continue building a life that brings you joy. All my love, Grandpa Malcolm. P.S. The combination to the safe behind the painting in my bedroom is your birthday. There's something in there you should see." I folded the letter carefully and looked up at my family. In that moment I felt an unexpected wave of pity for them, so caught up in appearances and expectations that they'd missed what really mattered. "I'm going to check on Vanessa," Mason said, finally standing up. At the door he paused. "For what it's worth, Bryn, I didn't know. And I'm sorry." As the door closed behind him, I faced my parents across the suddenly vast expanse of the study. The three of us were strangers, bound by blood, but divided by decades of secrets and disappointment. "You should know," I said calmly, "that Grandpa left evidence. Recordings. Documents. If you contest this, it all becomes public record." My father's face paled slightly. A corporate attorney, he understood immediately what that could mean for his reputation and career. "What do you want?" he asked, tersely. I smiled sadly. "That's the wrong question, Dad. It always has been." After my parents stormed out of the study, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the bookshelves, I sat alone in the sudden quiet, Grandpa's letter clutched in my hand. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the room, where so many family secrets had just been exposed. I knew I needed to find the safe Grandpa had mentioned. Making my way upstairs to his bedroom felt like walking through a museum of memories. The creaky third step, the family photos lining the hallway, the subtle scent of pipe tobacco that still lingered in the air despite the fact that he'd quit smoking years ago. His bedroom was exactly as he had left it. Neat, practical, with just a few personal touches. A photograph of my grandmother on the nightstand, a well-worn copy of Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea on the bedside table. The painting Grandpa had referenced was a landscape of the lake at sunset, one I had painted for his 80th birthday. I felt a lump in my throat as I gently removed it from the wall, revealing the small wall safe behind it. I entered my birthday, the 15th of April 2092, and heard the satisfying click as the lock disengaged. Inside the safe was a single manila envelope thick with documents and a smaller blue box. The envelope contained financial records dating back to when I was a child, systematically documenting every instance where my parents had treated Mason and me differently. Private school tuition for Mason versus public school for me. His extravagant birthday celebrations compared to my modest ones. The fully funded college education versus my scholarships and student loans. But the most shocking document was a copy of a trust fund agreement. A trust fund set up in my name when I was born. Grandpa had apparently established equal trusts for both Mason and me, but the record showed that my parents had been systematically withdrawing from mine throughout my childhood. Your dance lessons were getting expensive, my mother had explained when I was 12, and asked why I couldn't continue ballet while Mason's hockey equipment kept getting upgraded. We have to make choices, Brinley. I felt sick as I realized they had been using my own trust fund to pay for Mason's advantages, all while making me feel that I was somehow less deserving. There was a note from Grandpa paperclipped to the trust documents. I discovered this 3 years ago when I changed financial advisors. Your parents had legal access as trustees until you turned 25, but they violated the terms of the trust by not disclosing its existence to you. I've been quietly replenishing it since then with interest. The current balance is noted below. It's separate from your inheritance. Consider it restoration of what should have been yours all along. The figure at the bottom of the page made me gasp. It was enough to expand my business into the multimedia agency I'd been dreaming about, with capital to spare. I'm not going to lie to all of you watching. This moment was overwhelming. Have you ever had a truth bomb dropped on you that changed everything you thought you knew? If you're feeling that kind of connection to this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life family dramas that might make yours seem tame in comparison. With shaking hands, I opened the blue box next. Inside was my grandmother's engagement ring, a stunning Art Deco piece with a central sapphire surrounded by diamonds. I remembered admiring it as a child, and Grandma telling me, "Someday, when you find someone worthy of you, this will be yours." I had assumed that after her death it had gone to my mother. There was a small note with the ring. Eleanor asked for this repeatedly over the years, but Martha was adamant it should go to you. She saw in you the same spirit she had, an unwillingness to be defined by others' expectations. Tears streamed down my face as I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for me all along. A gentle knock at the door startled me. Mason stood there, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I nodded quickly, wiping away my tears. He entered and sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. "Vanessa's pretty upset," he said after a moment. "She said she always sensed something was off with how Mom and Dad treated you, but..." He trailed off, then finally met my eyes. "I should have seen it too. We were both kids, Mason. We accepted the reality we were presented with." He nodded, then noticed the documents spread around me. "What's all this?" I hesitated, then decided that the time for family secrets was over. I handed him the trust fund documents. Apparently, we both had equal trust funds, but mine was being drained to give you extras. His face went pale as he scanned the pages. "Jesus, Bryn. I had no idea." He looked up, genuine distress in his eyes. "All those times I bragged about my stuff, my opportunities. No wonder you kept your distance." "I never hated you," I said honestly. "I just couldn't understand why they loved you more." "They didn't love me more," Mason said with sudden insight. "They invested in me more." "That's not the same thing." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of our father that suddenly seemed less charming. It was all about the Caldwell name, the Caldwell legacy. I wasn't a son to them, I was a project. The realization seemed to hit him hard. For the first time I saw my brother not as the golden child but as another kind of victim, trapped in the suffocating expectations our parents had created. "What are you going to do?" he asked finally. "About the inheritance, the lake house, all of it." I looked out the window at the lake, thinking about all the summers I'd spent here with Grandpa, learning to fish, discussing books, just being accepted for who I was. "I'm going to honor Grandpa's wishes," I said, "but that doesn't mean I want to cut you out of my life, Mason. Despite everything, we're still siblings." He nodded slowly. "And Mom and Dad, they're already calling their lawyers." I pulled out Grandpa's letter and handed it to him. "They might want to reconsider that." As Mason read it, his eyes widened. "Classic Grandpa," he said with a small smile. "Always thinking 3 steps ahead." "He gave me the choice of how to handle it," I said. "And I'm choosing to offer them a chance to reconcile. As family, not as business associates trying to negotiate a deal." "Do you think that's possible after all this?" I thought about it honestly. "I don't know. But I have to try. Otherwise, what was all this for?" The next morning I woke early and sat on the dock, watching the mist rise off the lake as the sun crept above the tree line. This had always been my favorite time at the lake house. The world suspended between night and day, possibilities hanging in the air like the dew on spider webs. I had barely slept, my mind racing with revelations and decisions. By dawn I had formed a plan, not just for handling my parents' threatened lawsuit, but for reshaping our family's future in a way that might eventually lead to healing. Mason joined me on the dock, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. He looked as tired as I felt, but there was something different in his expression. A heaviness, as if he'd aged years overnight. "Vanessa left," he said, handing me a steaming mug. "She went back to the city. Said she needs time to think about everything." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "This has been hard on everyone." He shrugged, trying for nonchalance, but not quite achieving it. "She said some things before she left, about how she's watched me try to live up to Dad's expectations since we met. About how I've never seemed truly happy in corporate law." He stared out at the lake. "She might be right." We sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping coffee and watching a family of ducks glide across the water's surface. "Mom called me last night," Mason finally said. 3 times. I didn't pick up. I nodded, unsurprised. "They'll try to bring you back to their side. Tell you I'm being unreasonable, that we need to present a united front." "Is that what you think of me?" he asked quietly. "That I'd go running back to them after what they did?" I considered his question seriously. "Honestly, Mason, a week ago I would have said yes without hesitation. You've always been their perfect son. But now..." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the conflict in his eyes. "Now I'm not so sure. I keep thinking about something Grandpa said to me at my law school graduation," Mason said. "He asked if I was practicing the kind of law that made me want to get up in the morning, or the kind Dad wanted me to practice. I laughed it off then, but now you're wondering," I finished for him. He nodded. "What about you? What's your plan for dealing with them?" I told him about the strategy I'd formulated in the pre-dawn hours. Rather than engaging in a protracted legal battle that would drain both finances and any remaining goodwill, I would offer my parents a choice. One that required them to acknowledge their actions but provided a path forward. "I'm meeting with Mr. Harrington this morning to draft the proposal," I explained. "Then I want to present it to them in person. Neutral territory, not here at the lake house." "What exactly are you offering them?" Mason asked. "A modified trust," I explained. "They get the financial security they're worried about. An annual income healthcare coverage protection from any foolish investments Dad might make trying to rebuild his fortune. But the principle remains under my control as Grandpa intended." And the conditions, I took a deep breath. Accountability. They need to acknowledge what they did, to both of us. No more gaslighting, no more pretending it was normal to favor one child over another. I'm not asking for a tearful apology or instant transformation. Just honesty. Mason whistled low. "They won't like that. Especially Dad. His whole identity is wrapped up in being right." "I know. But it's non-negotiable." I turned to face him directly. "The other part involves you, but only if you want it." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Grandpa left me controlling interest in what remains of Caldwell Markets. The regional offices, the distribution centers, they're still profitable, just not as expansive as when he was running things. Dad's been managing them as a sideline to his legal practice, but he's been focused on extracting maximum profits, rather than building something sustainable." Mason finished, always quick to grasp business concepts. I've seen the quarterly reports. I nodded. I want to revitalize it. Return to Grandpa's original vision of stores that serve their communities, that treat workers fairly. But I can't do it alone. My expertise is in design and marketing, not operations. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You want me to help run Caldwell Markets only if it's something you'd actually want, not to please Dad or fulfill some family obligation, but because it speaks to you. I hesitated, then added, Grandpa told me once that you have better business instincts than Dad ever did, but that you were channeling them into the wrong field. Mason was quiet for a long time, staring out at the lake. I've hated corporate law from day one, he finally admitted. The games, the loopholes, the feeling that I'm just helping wealthy people get wealthier. But I never felt like I had a choice. You have one now, I said simply. He turned to me with a mixture of hope and skepticism. You'd trust me with this. After everything, I'm not offering it as a consolation prize, Mason. I'm offering it because I think we could build something meaningful together. Equal partners, different strengths. I smiled slightly. Besides, the company is literally called Caldwell Markets. There should probably be at least one Caldwell involved who actually understands spreadsheets. He laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in days. You never did have a head for numbers. Exactly. I can redesign the brand identity and marketing strategy, but someone needs to make sure we actually turn a profit. As the sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist, we began to outline a vision for the future. Not just of Caldwell Markets, but of our relationship as siblings rather than rivals. It felt strange but exhilarating to be planning together, complementing each other's ideas rather than competing. Later that morning, I met with Mr. Harrington at his hotel. He listened carefully to my proposal, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. It's an elegant solution, he said when I'd finished. Generous but with clear boundaries. Malcolm would approve. He shuffled through some papers. There is one more thing your grandfather wanted you to know about, but only if you seemed inclined toward reconciliation rather than retribution. He handed me a folder containing details of a family foundation Grandpa had established, dedicated to supporting arts education in underserved communities. The foundation had been running quietly for years, funded from Grandpa's personal accounts. He thought you might want to take over as director, Mr. Harrington explained. But he was adamant that it remain separate from family politics. That's why he never mentioned it while he was alive. Looking at the foundation's work, the scholarship programs, the community centers, the youth exhibitions, I felt a new connection to my grandfather's legacy. Not the financial empire or the family name, but the values that had guided his life. By afternoon, the legal documents were drafted. I texted my parents requesting a meeting the following day at Miss Harrington's office in Burlington. Dad replied curtly that they would be there, undoubtedly assuming it was to negotiate their demands. Mason and I spent the evening at the lake house cooking dinner together and talking more openly than we ever had before. For the first time, I saw him as his own person, not as the golden child who had inadvertently cast me in shadow. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said as we cleaned up the kitchen, I want you to know I'm on your side. Not theirs. I smiled, feeling a weight lift that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. That means more than you know. Mr. Harrington's office in downtown Burlington occupied the entire top floor of a historic building overlooking Lake Champlain. The conference room with its polished oak table and leather chairs felt appropriately formal for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. Mason and I arrived 15 minutes early, reviewing our strategy one last time. He would present the business aspects of our proposal, drawing on his legal training to address any contractual concerns. I would focus on the personal elements, the conditions for reconciliation, the boundaries I needed to establish. They're here, Mr. Harrington's assistant announced, and moments later my parents walked in. They looked immaculate as always. Dad in a tailored suit, Mom in a street John knit ensemble with pearls. But I could see the strain beneath the polished exterior. Dad's jaw was set in the rigid line that signaled barely controlled anger, while Mom's smile was fixed and brittle. Richard Eleanor Mr. Harrington greeted them professionally. "Please have a seat. I assume you've prepared a reasonable counteroffer," my father said, without preamble, pulling out a chair for my mother before sitting down himself. "Our attorneys have advised that Malcolm's will contains several contestable elements. Actually," I said calmly, "I've prepared a proposal that I hope will make legal action unnecessary." I nodded to Mr. Harrington, who distributed folders to everyone at the table. "Before you open those," I continued, "I want to make something clear. This isn't a negotiation of Grandpa's wishes. His will stands as written. What I'm offering is a path forward for our family that honors his intentions while addressing your concerns about financial security." My father's expression darkened. "If you think, Richard," my mother cut in, placing a restraining hand on his arm, "let's hear what Brinley has to say." Her tone was conciliatory, but I recognized the calculation behind it. She had always been the strategist in the family, more adaptable than my father's bullish approach. I took a deep breath and began outlining the trust I was proposing to establish. One that would provide them with an annual income healthcare coverage and continued residence in their home, which technically now belonged to me. "The principal remains under my control," I explained, "but the trust guarantees you financial stability for life." "And what do you want in return?" my mother asked shrewdly. "There's always a price." "Acknowledgement," I said simply. "Of what you did, the systemic favoritism toward Mason, the draining of my trust fund to finance his advantages, the attempt to manipulate Grandpa into disinheriting me." I met their eyes steadily. "No more gaslighting, no more pretending it was normal or justified." My father scoffed. "This is absurd. We gave you every opportunity." "No, Dad, you didn't," Mason interrupted, surprising everyone. "You gave me every opportunity. Bryn got the leftovers and she still managed to build a successful business on her own." He opened his copy of the folder. "It's all documented here, the withdrawn funds, the discrepancies in our upbringing. Are you really going to sit there and deny it?" My father's face reddened, but before he could respond, my mother leaned forward. "What exactly are you asking for, Brinley? A public confession, some sort of formal apology?" "Nothing public," I assured her, knowing how much appearance mattered to her. "Just honesty between us, and a commitment to change how we interact going forward." My father looked at the financial details of the trust, his attorney's mind clearly calculating the benefits against the costs. "And if we refuse this acknowledgement, then you're welcome to pursue legal action," I said calmly. "But before you decide, you should know that Grandpa left extensive evidence of your attempts to circumvent his wishes. Recorded conversations, witnesses' documentation, all of which would become public record in a court case." I let that sink in for a moment before continuing. "That would mean not just family embarrassment, but potential professional consequences. Ethical violations have ended careers at your firm for less, Dad." The color drained from his face as he recognized the trap he'd laid for himself. My mother, ever practical, quickly interjected. "The financial terms are acceptable," she said cautiously. "But I'm concerned about how Mason fits into all this. Surely he deserves—" "I've been offered a role as co-director of Caldwell Markets," Mason interrupted. "Equal partnership with Bryn. She's planning to revitalize the company, return it to Grandpa's original vision." My mother looked between us, clearly trying to process this unexpected alliance. "You're working together." "We are," I confirmed. "It turns out when you remove the artificial competition, we actually complement each other quite well." "And you're satisfied with this arrangement?" my father asked Mason directly, ignoring me entirely. Mason met his gaze steadily. "More than satisfied. I'm excited about it. More excited than I've ever been about corporate law, if I'm honest." A flash of genuine hurt crossed my father's face. perhaps the first authentic emotion I'd seen from him in years. "You've never said anything about being unhappy in law. Would you have listened if I had?" Mason asked quietly. The question hung in the air, unanswerable, because we all knew the truth. My father had never been interested in our actual desires or talents, only in how they fit into his vision of the family legacy. "Mr. Harrington," cleared his throat, "perhaps we should take a short break, give everyone a chance to review the documents more thoroughly." As he ushered my parents out to show them to a private consultation room, Mason and I exchanged glances. "Do you think they'll agree?" he asked once we were alone. "Mom will," I said with certainty. "She's pragmatic. The financial security will outweigh her pride." "Dad," I sighed. "It depends on whether his anger or his self-interest wins out." When they returned 20 minutes later, I could tell by my mother's composed expression that a decision had been reached. My father looked grim but resigned. "We accept the terms of the trust," he said stiffly, "and we acknowledge that certain disparities existed in how we raised you both." It wasn't the full reckoning I had hoped for, but it was a start. A crack in the wall of denial they had maintained for decades. "There's one more thing," I said, opening a folder containing the information about Grandpa's Foundation for Arts Education. "I'll be taking over as director of this foundation, which was very important to Grandpa. I'd like to invite you both to attend the annual gala next month, not as donors or board members but simply as family." My mother's eyes widened slightly at the olive branch being extended. "We would be honored," she said, and for once I detected a note of genuine emotion in her voice. As Mr. Harrington finalized the paperwork, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not everything was resolved. Deep wounds don't heal overnight. But we had taken the first steps toward a new kind of family relationship. One built on truth rather than appearances, on mutual respect rather than competition. Outside the office, as we prepared to go our separate ways, my mother hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace me briefly. "Your grandfather would be proud," she whispered, and for the first time in years I believed she meant it. 1 year has passed since that day in Mr. Harrington's office. The lake house has become a gathering place again, not just for holidays, but for weekend retreats and informal business meetings, as Mason and I continue to rebuild Caldwell Markets with a vision that honors Grandpa's legacy. My relationship with my parents remains a work in progress. Old habits die hard, and there are still moments of tension. But the foundation of honesty we established has made genuine connection possible in ways I never thought would happen. Most importantly, I've reclaimed my place in the family narrative, not as the overlooked daughter, but as the rightful heir to a legacy built on integrity and perseverance. Grandpa Malcolm's final lesson was perhaps his most valuable, that true inheritance isn't measured in dollars or property, but in the values we choose to carry forward. Wow, what a journey this has been. I want to thank each and every one of you for staying with me through this family saga. If you've ever experienced family betrayal or watched karma come full circle in your own life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Did justice get served in your situation? What lessons did you learn? If you enjoyed this story of family secrets and sweet revenge, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life dramas that will have you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to share with anyone who might be dealing with family drama of their own. Sometimes it helps to know you're not alone. Until next time, remember that the most important legacy isn't what's written in a will. It's the truth and integrity you bring to your relationships. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.